When life hits hard, most people freeze. Here's how leaders and single dads move forward.
Welcome to Rise to Lead, where unique perspectives redefine leadership.
Welcome to Rise to Lead. With me today is Mark Aylward. Mark founded, built, and sold two seven-figure service companies in the IT talent acquisition space. He raised three kids as a single father, having been awarded sole custody as his own attorney, and has spent 30 years helping people advance professionally. For the last decade, he's coached men through deep self-reflection to rebuild clarity, confidence, and purpose when life demands a reset. And I'm sure what you're going to share with us today, Mark, is actually relevant to all of us, not just to men. Sometimes, I have guests who speak more about helping women, but I think everything is really relevant to all of us. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would, Regina. Thank you for having me, by the way. It's a pleasure to be here. I think that one of the decisions that I had to make along the way was who to market to. And as you probably know, you can't market to everybody. Although most of my kind of professional advancement experience and observations, it aligns with anybody who's looking to move from where they are to another place, a better place. So yes.
Right. Yeah. So again, welcome to the show, Mark. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you.
And tell us a little bit more about your personal challenges. I know you've gone through some serious personal challenges. And what changed most in how you show up after those challenges?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I have spent a lot of time kind of wondering about that in the pursuit of helping other men in the same or similar circumstances. I think the couple things that come to mind, I think I became a better listener. I was pretty good, but my daughters in particular really helped me with that. And when I had to fill in as mom and dad, that kind of changed the landscape. So I think along with better listening skills came two other things, which are a deeper level of empathy for other people's challenges and a kind of I turned up my non-judgmental meter as well because when you get punched, relatively speaking, in life, if you don't come out of that with a little humility and a less judgment about others, then I think you've missed a really good learning opportunity. So those are the few things that come to mind.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting point, actually. And so you have raised three kids as a single father while building businesses,
Hmm.
not just doing one thing, but a lot of things, right? As most people who raise kids do. However, sometimes they have don't have to do it alone. So, what did that stretch force you to figure out about yourself?
Yeah. I remember a lot of people, friends and family members saying, how do you do it? And
Hmm.
I remember responding, I think we all have a significantly larger bandwidth than we think. I think we're all much more capable than we believe ourselves to be. And I think that, getting stretched, I guess, as you put it, it taps into that. I never thought, oh, woe is me, very infrequently. It didn't serve me to feel any self-pity or any victimhood kind of behavior. So I was kind of, when I look back on it, I guess a little amazed at my ability to multitask and manage. But I tried to focus on one thing as a primary goal, and that was what's in the best interest of my children, and everything else kind of came in behind that. The companies that I built, I had staff, I had operations, I outsourced a lot of functions like accounting and banking and legal and stuff like that. And I had a lot of other people making those things run. But when I encountered this divorce situation, I basically took my laptop and my phone and said, everything that I've learned, I'm going to use, and I'm going to just coach people on Zoom calls and phone calls and some face to face. But I'm doing that from the volleyball tournament. I'm doing that from the doctor's office. I'm doing that from the teacher's meeting. So I just sacrificed. I don't even like that word. It wasn't a sacrifice. It was just being a dad. Um, I forego, I form whatever the word is, material opportunities and opportunities to make money if they interrupted my role as a father and mother. So yeah, that would be the way I'd answer that.
Right. And when that uh, challenge started, how old were your kids?
It's an interesting question. I'm writing a book and I'm running into challenges with my memory with regard to some of those questions. I think my son was probably, and it's also definitely, what's the definition of when it started?
Right,
Um,
right. I
you
was
know,
thinking about that exactly
yeah,
when I asked the question.
yeah. So
So
if
curious about how you would answer. Uh-huh.
I look back at my 40th birthday
Mhm,
as the day I kind of thought to myself, this has got to end. This is going to
mhm,
end. And then it was a couple of years, I think, maybe 42 when I filed in 2002 or 2003. And I think my son was 6 and my eldest was 14. And so my middle daughter was probably 9 or 10.
mhm.
And then it took close to a decade because her goal was to make life hard for me, and there was no other consideration. So everything that she did was to delay, stall, lengthen, increase the amount of money that we spent. And so, it was, I guess that would be a good educated guess as to when it started and how old the kids were.
Right, right, right. Yes, and at that time, I'm sure you had, your focus was elsewhere. You had a lot to think about and to deal with.
Yes. Yes.
So it's totally understandable. Yes, and you had to really lead yourself in a very yeah, in a very consistent way, I would guess, if it was such a long process. So how did you then make it through this time? You said you did not fall into victimhood, which we know never serves us, right?
Right.
It's not something that ever serves us. Although we feel maybe in the moment that it does, but it never does really.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, how did you do that? Because this podcast is about leadership, and of course, that is a lot about self-leadership. So I want to focus on that.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a great point. I don't think anybody is capable of leading other people until they can lead themselves, and
Absolutely.
I think that involves levels of personal accountability. When we talk about the victimhood thing, it's not like I didn't feel every so often sorry for myself or a little bit of pity for myself. The challenge was that the idea was I'm not going to wallow in that. I'm not going to stay in that place for too long because if that involves too many drinks or staying up too late or making bad decisions of any kind, that's not going to serve my goal, which is what's in the best interest of my children. So, and then the other thing that I remember well was because they would come to me and say, "How do we know who's telling the truth, Dad?" And I said, I think regardless of who you're talking about, whether it's a teacher or a coach or your mother or your father or your grandfather or your uncle or whomever, any human being, when you see people, when the words that people are using are consistent with the actions that people are taking, that's where integrity is, right? It's not a foolproof formula, but it's really good formula because it's really simple and it's more often than not the truth. So I rested on that a lot, which made me very conscious of my behavior. I recognized early that these kids are less likely to do what I tell them to do and more likely to do what I actually do. So I turned up the volume on my own behavior, and that was very helpful. And then exercise, eating good food, not drinking too much alcohol, getting some rest. I don't know what I would have done without exercise. That was a real big deal for me. Still is.
Right. Words don't teach.
Yeah.
Actions do. And and yeah, and I think what we can also maybe teach children, and you might have done that or not, but just another suggestion is to really trust their intuition and their feelings, because energy is transmitted always, and it never lies, right? But sometimes we dismiss it and we don't know how to interpret it
You know,
because
I
we
was
didn't learn that. So I think that's something that might be useful as well.
it's a great point. I was talking to a client the other day, a similar circumstance, I suppose, and I said to him after listening to him for quite a bit, he was very emotional, and I said, you know, I want to tell you something, and I think it bears mentioning because of what you've just said to me. Your children are much stronger than you think they are. And I remember worrying a lot about my children during the course of this whole process, only to discover at the end, for a variety of reasons, they're okay. They're actually all three doing very well now. They're young adults, and we have a very strong relationship. And I think your point is valid. Too many parents, and I certainly don't mean to be on a soapbox telling parents what to do. It's a hard job, no matter who you are. But I treated my kids like they were mature from a very young age. I didn't use baby talk and I didn't condescend to them. I didn't coddle them. We collectively, grabbed ourselves together and said, this is going to be a rough road. So let's stop. Let's not whine about it. Let's not feel sorry for ourselves. Let's make good choices and do the best we can. Let's learn from everything. Let's take opportunities to be stronger. And because no matter who you are, life is hard. No one gets a pass. So the fortitude piece, the non-victimhood piece, and the energy, as you say, yeah, they turned out to be a lot stronger than I thought they were when we headed into this thing.
Right. Yes, you just said life is hard. So when life hits hard, a lot of people either shut down or they stay stuck. And you said you were working out. So that was one of the ways also to help you moving forward. But of course, also the mindset you described. Is there anything else you would like to add to that that would help you keep moving forward?
Yeah, I think the only way to lose in life, whatever that might mean, is to quit.
Yeah.
If you persist, there's always something on the other side of persistence. There's always and it seems to me that everything that I've ever done that I could consider worthwhile is was done with small incremental actions over long periods of time. Delayed gratification is a truth. It's a reality, and so being patient is a good skill to have. I learned that from my dad, among many other decent qualities. So patience was, and the other thing that reminds me of is that when you're in the presence of someone who's making you emotional, angry, scared, frustrated, the first thing to do is nothing, is to pause and to figure out a way to let these emotions subside so you can regain some objectivity and then make big decisions from an objective point of view as opposed to an emotional point of view. That skill was tested over and over a long period of time, and I did pretty well with that, I think.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And it's a big piece of self-empowerment to because nobody can really make you feel emotional, right? We
Hmm.
say it, but it depends on us whether we then become emotional. And emotional in itself is not a bad thing, right? We
Right.
have like all sorts of emotions,
Hmm.
but what do we do with them and how do we use them and what type of emotions do we want to prevail in our daily life? And we have a say in that. And it's important to remember that, right? Because
Yeah.
somebody is there. Of course, yes, we have our circumstances, we have our, other people. We cannot control other people's behavior, but we can control what we do with it.
Yeah, I think it's come to my attention for my whole life that everything is a choice.
Hmm.
If you choose it to be, ironically, and how we respond to things is a choice. I think the what I've developed, and as this is one of the things, one of the main things that I teach other men, because we're men are challenged with this. We like to be in control. We like to make decisions. We like to sometimes dominate conversations, and I think that sometimes that's handy, but sometimes it's a weapon that can be used against us as well. So I think the The idea that life is full of choices and everything is a choice, and that you know, you can either exercise that or you can't. I tend to believe that there are two types of people in the world, if you allow me that simplicity. And one is, upon challenge, we look to blame other people and other things, or upon challenge, we go inside and say, what could I have done to preclude that from happening? How did that happen? What can I do to make sure it doesn't happen again? Those are two distinctly different types of people, and one of them I can help, and the other one I can't.
Right. I want to pick up two things actually from what you just said again.
Hmm.
And first of all, I love that you said everything is a choice. Everything in
Hmm.
life is a choice. I literally just made a whole series of YouTube videos, a playlist of the choice topic,
It's
about the
great.
choice topic, both just in life and then also in leadership.
Hmm.
And it's such an important topic. We
Yes.
we everything is a choice. I just made another video yesterday which was more personal
Hmm.
about this topic, and it was about, coming back to New York City where I'm just right now, where I lived for many years, and then making a choice to move to a different location. For example, it was a different topic yesterday than the other videos, but
Hmm.
it's just it's just something that we need to also remember. There's always, every new day is a new choice, and many choices in reality. And then another thing that you said is about control. I think,
Hmm.
most of us are control freaks to a certain
Yeah, I suppose
extent.
so. I suppose so. Yeah.
Not just men. We want to be in control. Why? Because we think it gives us certainty. But it doesn't, does it really? I mean, we cannot control other people. And then when we want to always be in control, we actually deprive ourselves from new possibilities. That's what I have found.
Yeah, it does put restrictions on you. I think the ability, and going back to what I said earlier about my daughters and my listening skills, I don't know that they were the first people to tell me this, but it feels like it. Like, Dad, we don't need you to fix anything. I'm not looking for a solution. I just want you to listen. And
Wow.
I had a conversation with a colleague of mine who's a consultant who helps companies with, multi-million dollar decisions. And he said, I've deployed this in many a consulting engagement since we last spoke, Mark, and that is, do you want my help or do you just want me to listen? And I don't think that's independent of any, it's not a man woman thing. It's not a professional or personal thing. It's every human interaction. Do you want my help or you just want me to listen? It really is a great way to start conversations, you know? So,
Right.
yeah. And I think that to your leadership audience, and I want to say this before I forget it, because we've got some interesting ideas floating around here that got my mind racing. I think that the key to being a great leader, and I don't think there are many great leaders, I think there are a lot of people in positions of authority who are not leaders, is that you have to care deeply about the well-being of the human beings that you're leading. And I think if you actually take care to care about the people's well-being that work for you, all the other qualities of leadership follow that. And without that, you can perform, you can manage, but you can't lead. And that's my humble opinion.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Actually, care was one of the C's. I had a presentation once in the past that I did where I talked about I think the 8 or 9 C's, I can't remember now,
Hmm.
of great leaders. And one of them was indeed care.
Hmm.
It's very, very important. Yeah, it's so important also to realize that a lot of people make decisions after they run their thoughts by somebody. So that's when they want you to listen, but not give your opinion because it's still their decision.
Hmm.
Different people make decisions in different ways, and there are people, in fact, that need this sounding board to make their decision. And then all of a sudden, when they've talked through it with somebody just listening, then all of a sudden have gained clarity on what they want to do. And there are different ways we make decisions.
Yeah, yeah. As you well know, that sometimes you just have to make a decision on the spot. Sometimes
Mhm.
decisions require urgency, and you're not afforded the luxury of reflecting and contemplating and bouncing opinions off other people. And you have to understand when those times are. But at the same time, I think that sometimes just getting validation from someone that you trust is enough. I think most of the work that I do now with men is just letting them reflect off of me, and mostly me just asking questions and asking them questions about maybe thinking about things a little different, or have you considered this, or have you ever considered that, or are you aware that this is what you sound like right now when you talk about that particular topic? So it's really self-reflection aided by an advocate who happens to have a lot of experience helping people improve their circumstances. So, and I gotta say, Regina, all of this stuff I learned, I either stole it from somebody else or I made the wrong decision and learned not to do that again. So I'm a big fan of learning with your mistakes and the idea of mentorship.
Yes, absolutely. We don't reinvent the wheel every single day. It's all part of consciousness. We pick it up from consciousness or
Hmm.
from, from situations that we experience, from what other people say, what we read, but also even those ideas that we think are ours completely, they're part of consciousness, aren't they?
Yeah, that statement is packed with all kinds of thoughts for me. But I talk a lot because I help people for decades find better jobs, right? So
Mhm.
information technology people in
Right.
specific. But it's a it, people we don't collectively as humans, I think, do a very good job of self-reflection and self-analysis. And in my experience, I've needed the help of other people. I can think of a bunch of stories that I won't bore you with right now, but I think the idea of reaching out to someone else and getting an opinion is just a good idea. But you have to be careful about who you ask, because sometimes the people that love you don't have enough information or context to give you good decisions. Like my dad told me when I told him I was going to start my first company, he thought I was insane. I had little children. I was building a house, $1 million home. I had all kinds of stuff going on. And he's like, "What are you're going to drop this great job with this fat salary to start your own business?" Well, he had worked for the same company for 35 years. He never
Mm.
understood what it meant to change jobs. He certainly never understood what it meant to be an entrepreneur. So I had to take that advice with a grain of salt. And because I love him so much and respect him so much, that was pretty challenging, but I was able to do it. So you can't ask everybody for advice, but I think getting out of your own skin and getting someone else's objective opinion is it's helpful most of the time if you pick the right people.
Right. And then it's still your decision. That's
Yep.
important to remember. It's not
Hmm.
somebody else's decision because nobody can make your decisions. It's your life.
Yep.
Now, I want to
Yep.
go back to, this concept of care. And I think you use the term kind candor,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
I want to talk about that. What does that actually look like in a real conversation and in the context of leadership?
Well, I think the kindness, the kindness is, for instance, I've had to fire a few people in my day. Any employer
Mhm.
has had to do that. It's
Oh,
one of the
yeah, I
worst.
have to. I've
Yeah,
had to do that too.
it's one of the worst parts about being a leader is
Hmm.
having to terminate someone. But I never did it uh, disrespectfully. I never took anyone's dignity or attempted to take anyone's dignity. It was always, hey, the way that I do things is not the only way to do things, but it's the way I do things. And you don't seem to be aligned with the way I'm doing things. And I think that's probably in both of our best interests if we move on, because I don't want to force you to do things the way I'm doing them just because it's the way I do them. And I think that you might find another opportunity in another environment where you could flourish doing things a little bit different that was more aligned with the way that you think and your values. So that's a very candid thing to say to someone, but I'm not telling somebody what they want to hear. I'm telling somebody what I think they need to hear. And I think that being nice to people is often misrepresented. And I think starts, pardon my French, but that's kissing someone's ass. And I don't think that's good for anybody. And I don't think most people, all great leaders, they don't want anybody kissing their ass. They want people telling them the truth. then it's the way that you tell the truth. If you bring kindness to that conversation, you can still be frank, and respectful. And I don't do one without the other. I don't think you can successfully do one without the other. I think you can be kind, um, and 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 be truthful, but if you're not candid and you're trying to dance around an issue, both of you are going to lose. I think whether it's short term or long term, it's going to happen eventually. So that's what I mean by that, the distinction between being nice and being kind, and candor being the truth, but respectfully. Well, you don't have to hurt people's feelings. They may get hurt, but that's not the intention.
Right. And I also recall a few conversations like that when I was working at a consulting firm, and I was in charge of a relatively big team. And of course, there are situations when you have to face this type of conversations, and then a lot of people know these conversations should happen, but they keep putting them off.
Mhm.
And it's as you said, it's about kissing ass, or it's about people pleasing.
Mhm.
We all have a little bit of that, I think,
Yeah, I agree.
that, or most of us, because we want to be liked. It's just a part of human nature, social beings. However,
Hmm.
at some point we need to really think about, okay, what's more respectful, what's more uh, you know what's more valuable to this person, transparency, and put it in a kind way, as you said, or putting it off and creating resentment on both sides eventually, probably.
Yeah, yeah. Most of the decisions that I have attempted to put off, maybe all of them, and I'm not perfect. I make a lot of mistakes for sure. They they've not gotten better, they've gotten worse. They became more difficult. The conversations got harder. So I think that, as soon as you think someone should be terminated, that's probably the time to terminate them. To go off and reflect on that and let some time elapse, at least in my experience, has never worked. It just delays the inevitable.
Right. I mean, if it's a specific skill they need to add, it's a bit different. But, or if you've never had the conversation, maybe you want to have that conversation first to give them a chance to actually correct something. However, if that's not happening, then definitely I would agree. And yeah, it depends on the situation a little bit. But yeah, in rough terms, I absolutely agree with that. So, um, yeah, and then you've already described to us a little bit how we can make sure that they actually hear you instead of getting defensive, which is, of course, what we're also afraid in that situation, at least subconsciously, right? That they might get defensive.
Yeah, I think the it's funny. I was in a meeting a couple months ago now, maybe a year ago, and I used the phrase, "What do you mean by that?"
Mhm.
And it's a phrase I use a lot because I think one of the mistakes we make in communication is presuming that we understand what's actually being said to us when we don't. This again is being agreeable and people pleasing and kind, because questioning somebody's what they said can be delicate. But this one guy said to me, "You really like that phrase. You should get a T-shirt with that phrase on it." And I did. I have a black T-shirt with the phrase on it. What do you mean by that? And sometimes people stop me in the grocery store, and I've forgotten that I have the shirt on, and they'll say something like, "What do you mean by that?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, you should make it your merch.
But it is, I mean, it's when I started working with AI, it was interesting because I started prompting AI and I discovered almost immediately this is just like interviewing a person. I've done thousands of interviews. And when you're interviewing someone, context is everything. You can't take everything literally. You have to dig, you have to go deeper, especially into personal values and things that are important to this person. And I found myself really adept at prompting very quickly because I spent my life doing it with people. I just thought that was kind of funny. But context is, most of us leave context on the table when we're talking, and we walk away from conversations with a different understanding than was intended. That's been my experience.
Right, right. Yeah, very interesting. And yeah, if you need a second t-shirt, I have another suggestion for that, and that's tell me more.
Yeah,
I think that's another really great phrase, but I love the what do you mean by that? Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. That's a good one. Tell me more is definitely a good contextual opener. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Also, when we are not quite sure whether an idea is a good idea, and we don't want to say no right away
Hmm.
because it's potentially a good idea and we just cannot see it yet,
Hmm.
right? That also happens sometimes.
Yeah. So
In,
you gotta buy yourself time sometimes to think through things, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, 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 yeah. So, looking back at your life so far and your experience, also your professional experience, what do you wish you had understood earlier about yourself in all of this?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Um, yeah, I think I did learn it early. I remember questioning, so maybe that doesn't answer your question. I remember questioning my faith at a young age, about 16 or 17. My dad's a very faithful Catholic, and I thought he was going to be upset with me. And he said, "No, no, no, no. You should question your faith. That's how your faith gets stronger." And it was an interesting time in my life because I went on from that point on. I kind of had permission to question everything, and whether I actually had permission or not, he it felt like I did. And I went into the work world, for instance. When I started talking to companies about hiring people, and this is true probably of every profession, but I was told by people in the process that this is the way we do things. This is the way these things have to be done. And my instincts were always, why? What? Maybe there's a better way. Why is this way the only way? And that served me really well. I wish I was more consistent with that, because I guess being contrarian, for lack of a better phrase, I think is really how you move the ball. It's how you open the envelope. It's really how you make progress. I think is questioning things, and then developing a skill to do it. Back to my kind candor. Do it kindly, not be disrespectful about it. So I think the only thing that I look back on now that I would have done differently is just risk. I think I would have taken more risks. I've been rewarded when I've taken risks, and when I've chosen not to risk things, whether it was trying out for my college basketball team or anything. I've been rewarded most of my life with the risks that I've taken, and I wish there were. I regret to some extent. I don't wallow in it, but I regret to some extent a few things that I probably should have risked that I didn't.
Wow, that's interesting
Mhm.
because I feel the same way, right? And you have taken some very important risks from what
Hmm.
we've heard from you. Also creating this business at the time when everybody around you thought it was a crazy idea, maybe,
Hmm.
or too
Hmm.
risky. But then there are those moments. I've also had, I mean, they're not, yeah, I have had a few of those moments when I thought, oh my gosh, you know what? It was actually not even a huge risk. It was just at the moment, I, I said, maybe, no. And I wish I had done those things. You
Hmm.
know, I've taken a
Hmm.
ton of risks like you. I think you have. You know, that's why you're saying that actually.
Maybe, maybe, yeah.
Because if not, maybe you would need not even question. And here's the questioning again, this,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then I want to go back to the questioning. I actually think, we should question everything.
Yeah.
If people were questioning more, we would have had a very different world in the last few decades and whatnot. And and we a lot of people are just really running along with what's presented to them in so many ways. And I
Hmm.
believe that questioning is such an important aspect. And opportunity of being human and of making that difference, not just individually, but also collectively. I,
Yeah,
it's such a big topic to me.
it's a huge topic. I think that I think questioning things, it promotes discussion, it promotes investigation, you know, not to get political, but I think the noise out there now, most of it, it doesn't matter what side of the noise that you're on. The noise is, I don't want to discuss that.
Yeah,
That matter is settled. And I'm like, you know, how about we lean on science and look at science and math and facts and numbers and go, is it ever over? Is the discussion ever over? Can't we find out something new? Can't we discover something we didn't know before? Can't we
yeah,
think about something a little differently based on someone else's world experience? I mean, to say, I don't want to talk about that or to raise your voice or change the topic, that just means you're not comfortable with the topic in my estimation. Like, we don't have to agree about everything. That's not something I'll ever insist upon. Who am I to suggest that you need to agree with me, you know? But to not discuss it, that doesn't make any sense to me. It just
right.
doesn't. You know, we can't move forward if we don't discuss things.
And it has become so that, yeah, it's only black or white, right? There's only two things, and that's this intentional separation and division creating anyway that's going on in politics that we have. But also the other thing of it is the other side of it is let me remember what I wanted to get back to. There's so much to unpack here.
I distracted you with the statement about
No,
politics.
science. Go ahead.
Okay.
That was it. The actually science does not mean facts. Science stands for research,
Hmm.
for finding out, for finding new insights, for evolution, for yeah, increasing our knowledge around things. That's what science really is, and anything else is manipulated science, in
Yeah,
my
I
view,
mean,
right?
you can't, science is not done by starting with the end
It's
in
never done.
mind, right? It's you don't have a conclusion and then support the conclusion with facts and data. You investigate to work towards conclusions. I mean, it wasn't, you know, I mean, when Columbus took off in his boat, everyone else in the world thought the world was flat, you know? So this is not new. This notion of learning
And
new
do we
things.
really know whether it's round two? I mean, we know not. I have not been able to determine that myself, frankly, because
Well,
there's a lot of different data, and there's data that speaks for both
well,
to
it's a
to date.
if you're interested and willing to have the conversation, then it
Mhm.
becomes an interesting conversation. And
Right.
I mean, we just sent astronauts to the other side of the moon. No one's ever seen the other side of the moon until yesterday, you know? So, I mean, the world is full of examples of no, that we're not done. If that discussion is done, it's only because you're stubborn or arrogant. It's not because the conversation's over. It's because you don't want to continue the conversation. So,
Right.
yeah, it's a big topic. It's probably a whole podcast episode. So
A
you
whole,
can
a
drag me
whole
back wherever you want to
series of
go.
episodes. Okay. All right. Well, but it's a great way to end this conversation, unless you wanted to add anything that we haven't touched on that, and of course I'm going to ask you where people most easily can find you.
Yeah, I mean, my name is how you find me. I own that domain, so it's Mark Aylward, Aylward. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I think if you type in my name, my LinkedIn profile comes up number one. It's not an American name; it's an English name,
Mhm.
and so that's my website, my YouTube channel. I produce an awful lot of free content. Most all of it is around helping you perform at a higher level or helping you move from a circumstance that's not to your satisfaction to a much better circumstance personally and professionally. I have trouble mixing up the two. I can't help somebody professionally unless we delve into their personal situation. And
Absolutely.
it's a relationship game for me, and we got to go deep or we can't be effective. So, yeah, I would encourage anybody that any of this has resonated with to just look me up. and read some stuff, watch a few videos, see what you think. And if it continues to resonate, the first thing I do with people is have a 30-minute conversation on my dime. And I can usually give them in about 10, 15 minutes, although I give them 30, I can give them at least a couple of actionable things they can do based on the contextual investigation that we'll do in that short period of time. And if they want to work with me in a more formal manner, we can talk about what that looks like. But yeah, I'm focused on men that are facing divorce, so could be contemplating, could be in the middle of it, could be trying to recover from it, because it really takes our strength away, that whole process. It takes our objectivity away. And when I was running around looking for help, I had family and friends that were very helpful, but I didn't have anybody like me. The resources out there are mostly for me. They were mostly for women. They're not for men. We're not supposed to talk about this stuff, apparently.
Yeah, that's also why I brought you on, actually. That
Yeah.
was one of the reasons. So
Okay.
I really wanted to have this conversation
Good.
with you and for people to know that this resource is available because you have gone through the situation. You know how to uh, charter this boat, right? You know how to get through it in a way that doesn't eat you up. So thank you for doing this work. And thank you so much for sharing so much of your knowledge today and of your expertise, John. To all listeners, come back next week. So many amazing guests lined up for you.
Thank you, Regina.
Your life looks successful on the outside, but doesn't feel right on the inside anymore. If you're done performing and ready to feel fully alive, go to transformyourperformance.com/success now what. If it resonates, we'll take it further together. If you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe, share it, and join us next time.